In 1979, Marion Stokes pressed record on her television and never stopped. For 35 years, she filled her home with 70,000 VHS tapes. Why? She believed truth would one day erode, not in a single collapse, but piece by piece. She saw it coming, and here we are. We grew up hearing seeing is believing. Today, seeing isn't believing at all.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
You know the feeling. You scroll past a clip and before the shock even lands, another thought slips in. Wait, is this real? That hesitation lingers even when the video is genuine. That's the danger. Not that AI fakes trick us, but that even the truth feels suspicious. Only a few years ago, AI could barely string a sentence together. Now it clones voices, fabricates faces, and even writes research papers. In one cultural blink, we stepped into a world where code can summon anything and our senses can't tell the difference. So what happens when doubt becomes the default? If every photo, every voice, every clip could be fabricated, how do we know what to trust? By the end, we'll unpack what collapses when suspicion spreads and how we can adapt, not with sharper eyes, but with a new way of seeing. Because once the mirror of reality cracks, the first fracture doesn't appear in courts or politics. They start closer to home.
It's a test designed to provoke an emotional response. Shall we continue?
Proof still looks like proof until a hairline of doubt slides in. For more than a century, we treated cameras like witnesses. A photo could sway a jury, a broadcast could tilt an election. Seeing wasn't just believing, it was remembering. But the moment we start second guessing what's on a screen, the whole structure wobbles. Have you ever looked at a picture of someone you loved and wondered if it was filtered, staged, or even spun up by an AI? That pause doesn't just touch the image, it touches the relationship. Researchers found false news spread 6 times faster than the truth. Not because it's right, but because it's novel. Your brain files interesting first and accurate later, which means our wiring rewards the fake before the real even has a chance. The bias is ancient. Better to see a line in the grass that isn't there than miss the one that is. Social platforms echo the same survival twitch, boosting spread and surprise over patience. And culture has always chosen patterns in the noise, tea leaves, tarot cards, static radio. We've built to overreact and the feed knows it. You'd think sharper eyes would fix it, but context matters more than eyesight. Trusting the feed is like playing Russian roulette, except every chamber has a water gun until one day it doesn't. Look, I told myself at first it was harmless. Cat videos, cooking hacks, the usual. Then one night I caught myself wondering if the act was AI. That's when I knew the floor had tilted. If we miss this shift, it won't just change what we watch, it'll change what we count as real. And when that bends, everything bends with it.
And the reason we know that there is a comet is because we saw it. We saw it with our own eyes.
It feels like you're just scrolling, but every pause of distrust rewards the content that confuses you most. Truth doesn't collapse all at once, it buckles under 1,000 tiny choices multiplied by millions of us. What happens when the shrug becomes a habit? Relax, only gullible people fall for deepfakes. Comforting at first until you realize the fake doesn't need to fool everyone. It only needs to seed enough doubt that even the truth can be shrugged off. Courts and newsrooms stand on evidence, but if a forged clip can pass as real and a real clip can be dismissed as fake, then proof stops persuading. Trials stall, elections wobble, medical advice becomes optional, and that's not an internet problem. That's a juror deciding guilt, a voter deciding trust, a patient deciding whether to follow a doctor's voice on a screen. When doubt is cheap, we spend it everywhere, and the bill arrives in authority we can no longer use. And here's the twist. Permanent suspicion feels like protection, but it doesn't save us. In fact, it paralyzes us, and is where the next fracture hits. We think permanent suspicion keeps us safe. The truth is, it makes us passive. Because if our way forward is this cloudy, who dares move first? Look at this spread. The New York Times in 1971. The Pentagon Papers splash across the front page. Government secrets, undeniable documents, the kind of proof that should have rattled the nation. Yet a large part of the public shrugged. Proof doesn't always cut through, not when the air is already thick with doubt and people who have chosen to breathe the fog. Have you ever dismissed something true just because it looked too polished? If you've ever typed that perfect late night reply, then deleted it with, "What's the point?" you already know the circus. It's everywhere. AI generated faces passing as news anchors, conspiracy claims racking up shares, and denials of footage that's real. Doubt isn't sneaking in anymore, it's the default setting. Swearing off truth because you got fooled once is like quitting food altogether after finding one hair in your soup. I used to wait for perfect certainty before I acted. I thought clarity would eventually arrive. Weeks passed, nothing did. Certainty never shows up on time. The fracture doesn't stop at what we see. They feed into how the systems make money. The twist: truth has no value here. What sells is the pause, the raised eyebrow, the endless scroll through uncertainty. Doubt isn't the crack, it's the business plan. Picture yourself in a packed arena. The crowd roars as a gruesome spectacle unfolds. Would you cheer or would you walk away? Most of us like to think we'd walk, but every scroll, every click is a tiny cheer. The system counts, which means we're all in the stands, louder than ever. Be honest and let me know in the comments which side would you land on. The fracture doesn't stop at what we see. They spread into what we count as real. Here's the twist. In the economy of attention, truth doesn't collapse because lies beat it. Truth collapses because it stops mattering. A clip that makes you hesitate is worth more than a clip that convinces you. Doubt itself has become the product.
There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars.
The apocalypse isn't lies winning, it's truth drowning beside them. And when both sink together, what are we left with? Yuval Noah once said, "In the past, censorship worked by blocking the flow of information. In the 21st century, censorship works by flooding people with irrelevant information. That flood is the feed, so dense you can't tell what's signal and what's noise. We think we're steering it, but the torrent is already steering us. You might think the real danger is gullible people falling for fakes, but it isn't about gullibility at all. It's about wiring. Even the most rational amongst us project agency onto machines. The illusion works because our brains are built to make it work. You think you're choosing, but you're being steered. So the way forward isn't sharper eyesight, it's changing the room we're in. Think of trust like a grocery aisle in 2020. A single empty shelf was enough to make people panic, not because the risk had changed, but because the signal did. The shelf told a story, and people believed the story more than the facts. So if sharper eyes don't save us, what actually can? The age of see it to believe it is over. That sounds bleak, but maybe it's the invitation. If looks can deceive, then looks stop being the point. What matters now is the process, not whether something appears real, but where it came from, what stood behind it, and how it was verified. That means we can't stay passive. The scroll, the shrug, the instant reaction, those days are done. Truth only holds when it's shared. In journalists, in neighbors, even in the group chat that checks you before you post. I once tried to brute force it with willpower. Just don't get tricked, I told myself. That lasted a day. What worked was changing the room. Unfollowing outrage loops, moving apps off my home screen, letting friends fact check me. Turns out the environment shape you more than resolve does. So the way through isn't sharper eyesight, it's better process, shared on purpose. And if we can adapt to that, maybe the end of easy truth can also be the beginning of a stronger kind. We say we'd explore what happens when seeing isn't believing anymore. And here we are. The greatest danger AI brings isn't the fake that fools us, it's the numbness that follows. Because when truth and lies drown together, we don't fight over which one wins, we just stop swimming. I used to stare at the glow of my screen waiting for guidance, but it was only glass and light. The guidance has to come from what we choose together. So here's the lever you can pull now. Pause before you share, double check the source, or ask a friend to fact check with you. It sounds small, but every pause is a thread, enough threads and the net holds. The end of truth won't look like a dramatic collapse, it would look like a million anticlimactic shrugs. Truth dies when no one defends it. And if seeing isn't believing anymore, then survival depends on how we believe together. If this essay gave you something to think about, I've linked the sources and tools in the description. Using those links helped me keep making essays like this for you. Take care of your attention this week, and I'll see you in the next one.